Hey everyone, my name is Josh, and today I'm here to do something a little bit different. Normally, I come on here to talk about movies and TV shows and their story structure and plot and how to write good stories. But today I want to put on my lawyer hat from my day job and talk about the latest development in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a legal battle ongoing between Marvel and the estate of Stan Lee. Now, this comes based on a report from the Hollywood Reporter showing that Marvel has filed suit against the estates of three of the biggest Marvel creators in the company's history: Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and Gene Colan. Jack Kirby's estate actually had undergone a similar suit against Marvel back in 2013, which was resolved, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. There's been a lot of turmoil on the internet today, with people talking about how this is going to be the end of the MCU and Marvel's going to lose Spider-Man and Iron Man. That's just a little bit hyperbolic, and I really want to walk through today why that's the case. Now, a little disclaimer, I am a lawyer. I am a bar lawyer in Virginia in the District of Columbia, but I am not a copyright lawyer. I am not a specialist in copyright law. These opinions are just based on my understanding of copyright law, my bit of research that I've done, and my reading of the complaint. I did take intellectual property law in law school, so I have a baseline understanding. It's not my day-to-day job, so there could be very small nuances and things that I might not consider, but this is just me giving a lawyer's baseline first take impression on what is going on with this lawsuit. So the first thing I want to clarify is the fact that Marvel is not being sued. This is something I've seen a lot of people get wrong, and I want to clarify it. Marvel is the one suing the estates of those three comic creators that I was talking about, and I'll get into why in just a second. But you should know that the lawsuit is not against Marvel. It's coming because of an action that the estates... Now, why is Marvel suing the estates of these three renowned comic book writers? The reason is because the estates have filed a notice of copyright termination. In layman's terms, what this means is that these comic writers' estates are attempting to claw back the copyrights that they licensed to Marvel back when they created these comic characters, like Spider-Man, like Iron Man, the Avengers, so on. Now, they're able to do this under the Copyright Act of 1976, which granted the authors of certain copyrightable properties and their estates, since Stan Lee, Steve Ditko have passed, it's their estates that are filing this copyright termination notice, the ability to get back those licenses under certain circumstances. It has to be after a certain amount of time after the license is granted, and there are some exceptions of things that cannot be clawed back, which is why Marvel is suing. So one of the types of copyrights that cannot be terminated under Copyright Act of 1976 is a copyright that is a work for hire. Basically, this means a work that is commissioned for or done for your employer is not a copyright that you can claw back. You work at a burger shop, and the burger shop tells you you need to create a poster for their advertising, and you do that as part of your employment. Maybe you're in the marketing department. You can't later come back and say, well, I created that poster that you're using, and the characters and the artwork of that poster is my copyright. It's still the burger joint's copyright because you commissioned it for that. That's the basis of why Marvel is suing. They are claiming that these characters are works for hire. The Copyright Act of 1976 defines a work for hire as either a work that is created within the scope of employment or a work that is ordered or commissioned for use for another. I don't know the employment status of Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Gene Colan from back in the 70s, but it's very hard for me to believe that these were not created at least as commissioned works. As Marvel's complaint says multiple times, these were works that were commissioned for and paid for. They were created for Marvel in anticipation of being paid. Marvel paid them on a per-page basis. So these characters seem to fit the definition of a commissioned work. So then you might be asking, if it's unlikely that the creators' estates can even get clawback of these licenses, since they do very clearly seem to be works for hire, why bother doing them? The answer is obvious. It's money.
Hello, I like money.
For an explanation, you can actually turn to, as I mentioned earlier, Jack Kirby's estate. Jack Kirby actually did the exact same thing to Marvel back in 2009, represented ironically by the same attorney who is representing these three creators' estates. Back in 2009, they were attempting to claw back licenses for other Marvel characters that Kirby created, like the Hulk, like the X-Men, like Captain America. Now, we can actually draw a lot of commonalities between that case from the past and this case here, because a lot of the facts are very similar. In that case, it was revealed that Kirby was a freelance creator for Marvel. He was paid on a per-page basis. He was paid for his creations of the characters. And as a result, two lower federal courts found that Kirby's estate was not entitled to claw back those copyrights because they were works for hire. So ultimately, though, what happened was this was a very lengthy case, and the two sides ultimately settled out of court, which is something that happens all the time. In law, it's more often than not that cases never even make it to court. So it's very, very likely that even though there's a precedent that has been set, that Marvel is probably going to keep these characters. Estates of Steve Ditko and Stan Lee and Gene Colan are going to get some money for it, because Marvel and Disney now are going to try and make sure that that this suit kind of goes away and it's not something hanging over them. They don't want the negative publicity. There's already a perception that Marvel does not treat its comic creators very well. So this is another instance where people will hold that up. It's very likely that what will happen is that the sides will settle out of court. Marvel will retain the rights to all of these characters, and nothing's going to change. So everybody out there who's flipping out, saying that this is the end of Marvel Comics, this is the end of Spider-Man and Marvel, this is the end of the MCU, don't. It's going to be fine. Thank you for watching. Like I said, this is something new for me. I just saw this on the internet, and it's kind of in my wheelhouse, so I kind of wanted to talk about it. If you like this and you want me to do more stuff like this, more stuff talking about like the nitty-gritty of law and entertainment, drop a like. Maybe I'll do some more stuff like this. But in the meantime, catch you next time.